I'm excited to welcome you to the third breakfast briefing of 2018. My name is Hunter Hill. I'm a member of the BGR Board of Directors and the chairman of the Breakfast Briefings Committee. BGR is a nonprofit, nonpartisan public policy research firm dedicated to informed policymaking and the effective use of public resources. BGR's reports identify opportunities and solutions on high-leverage issues in local government. We also monitor more than 70 government entities across Jefferson, Orleans, and St. Tammany parishes. BGR's goal is the improvement of government in the greater New Orleans area. Breakfast briefings further BGR's mission by allowing citizens and policymakers to discuss issues that affect all of our lives. We hope you will take advantage of the question and answer portion of today's program. On your seat is a flyer with instructions for submitting questions using the Slido website. Today's event code for Slido is Q424. I'll repeat that, Q424. If you prefer to write your question, please hand it to a BGR staff member and include your name if you'd like to be identified. The best way to stay on top of all BGR events and research is to become a member. Last year, we put plans in motion to regularly engage with our members about our public policy work. BGR values this dialogue, and we appreciate our members' support in amplifying BGR's good government recommendations. So if you're not currently a member, please consider joining the ranks of concerned citizens working to improve local government. And finally, I'm happy to announce that BGR has launched its newly redesigned website. It is now easier to access bgr.org on your phone or tablet, search our library of reports, stay up to date with BGR news and events, and share our work on social media. You can also learn more about our history and impact, and bgr.org makes it easy and secure to become a member. And now to introduce our topic this morning is Dennis Woltering. You know Dennis as WWL-TV's former news anchor. He continues to serve our community and is an active member of the BGR board. Thank you, Dennis. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Hunter. Good morning. I'd like to express my gratitude to Iberia Bank for its generous sponsorship of BGR's Breakfast Briefing Series for 2018. Their support allows BGR to make these events free to the public. I would also like to acknowledge BGR's President and CEO, Amy Globinski, and BGR's award-winning staff. They do a fantastic job of planning and executing these quarterly events. In May, LaToya Cantrell entered the mayor's office as the first woman to lead New Orleans in its 300-year history. In her inaugural speech, she emphasized the need to make New Orleans safer, to fix broken infrastructure, to increase economic opportunity, and to make New Orleans a better place for all residents. Mayor Cantrell knew she would face major challenges right off the bat. Chief among them, in the eyes of many residents, is the multifaceted dysfunction of the Sewerage and Water Board. Another daunting challenge is the persistent level of gun violence in New Orleans. Her administration also encountered stalled progress on $2 billion in federally funded street and drainage work, plus poor administration of the city's juvenile detention center. Citizens have seen Mayor Cantrell take action on these fronts. The Sewerage and Water Board has hired a new executive director who began this month. Mayor Cantrell has mapped out a strategy to reduce violence. Her administration has accelerated street work and its revamping operations at the detention center. But still, new challenges persist. One of the most immediate is balancing the city's 2019 budget. And as you all know, because we postponed this event 2 weeks ago, the mayor has now had her first taste of leading the city through a tropical storm event. Here today to address the initiatives she has begun in her first months in office, as well as her plans for the future, is Mayor LaToya Cantrell. Thank you for joining us this morning, Mayor. The floor is yours.
Well, good morning, and thank you so much for having me. You know, BGR has had a long history, not only in the city of New Orleans, but really in the region, with pointing us to real issues that we just need to address. I have to say I got my latest letter from BGR on yesterday, my copy, as it relates to the proposed project convention center property there. And so I want to continue to thank just BGR for taking deeper dives and asking the right questions so that we collectively can make ultimately the best decisions for the city of New Orleans, for our region, and for the state of Louisiana. It is definitely in the spirit, in my opinion, of just trying to ensure that all revenue and all resources that we have, that we're utilizing them and that we're leveraging them, again, to ultimately improve the quality of life in the city of New Orleans. So I thank BGR, I thank your leadership, past and present, and I do look forward to working with you as mayor of the city of New Orleans. It doesn't mean that we're all going to agree, of course not. But what it does mean that I will always be willing to listen, to have the tough conversations, and therefore to determine what our strategy will be moving forward collectively, because that is what's going to make New Orleans a better place, and literally for all of us. We know that we have to grow in order to survive, and growing means growing our tax base, because we've yet to regain our pre-Katrina numbers in terms of population, and we still have this city in terms of its mass built for over 600,000 people that are being funded primarily by about 400,000 people. So the math has to work. We also have to grow in order to survive as it relates to our economic growth and development, growing jobs and real opportunity for people, connecting them to wealth, meaning opportunities to build wealth, to maintain their viability right here in the city of New Orleans, and even to just get a fair shake and a fair shot. We have to grow. We have to grow as it relates to retaining people in this city. We want to make sure that it's not just attract, because we have to attract people to our city to move here and invest in the growth of the city of New Orleans, but we also have to retain those who are here. And whether that is our children who we've raised or we're raising now that are in college, and we want them to stay and continue to be a part of this great fabric of the city of New Orleans. We also, as it relates to growing in order to survive, we have to ensure, and I talk about this revenue here, I truly believe now is the time in the history of the city of New Orleans to take a real focus on the revenues that are generated right here in the city of New Orleans and how those revenues are distributed really statewide, but even as they come back to the city of New Orleans, and even looking at the mills that generate these dollars as well. We have over 16 mills that are generated right here but do not funnel through the city of New Orleans, meaning city government. So various entities have their own sets of controls, and that's not so much a bad thing. But it becomes a bad thing when we're not open to change and when we're not open to sharing and restructuring in order to meet the infrastructure needs of our city, as well as, one, the human infrastructure needs of our city. I look at it as two tracks: physical infrastructure, human infrastructure. We have our challenges. But at the same time, I believe that we have the resources that we need. Of course, we can always use more. But before we go after more, let's see how we can redirect and utilize the resources that are generated and therefore poured back into the city of New Orleans. And I'm not saying for a party. I'm saying truly for a purpose to ensure that infrastructure is here so that we can continue to thrive in the city of New Orleans. If we do not fix it now, I really don't know where we will be. And that just doesn't rest along the lines of the Sewage and Water Board. Thinking about sewer, water, and drainage in the city of New Orleans can no longer be one-dimensional. We have to look at it as a system and as an approach that we want to take to ensure that we don't flood due to rainwater, that people aren't overbilled, that people are met truly where they are with the levels of customer service that they need, that our homes are protected as well. We can do this. And I believe in this post-Katrina environment as a city, we have made great strides in this direction. For the first time, we do have an urban water plan that we know has to be fully implemented. That price tag rests around at the bottom of it is about $4 billion. And right now, it's an unfunded mandate. But we have to ensure that the urban water plan, again, is fully implemented. One of our pillars, one of our dimensions. We also have to ensure that the Sewage and Water Board has the leadership and management in place to fully operate, utilizing, again, the resources that it has. I believe we've made great strides in that direction as well. Our new director, as Dennis mentioned, has been appointed, Mr. Ghassan Korban, who is here. Ghassan, just stand up and show him some love, man. This has been a long process. Thank you. It's been a long process, but I'm going to have to tell you it has been worth the wait, meaning the wait of 135 days that I've actually been serving as your mayor. So I think that we've hit the ground running in this regard. Now, Mr. Ghassan, after stepping foot in the city of New Orleans, the first week he was out cleaning up and weeding a rain garden because he understands that it's not just looking at Sewage and Water Board as an agency, but other infrastructure improvements that need to happen and to be sustained so, again, we can be viable and we can be great. We have a new, I would say, constituted Sewage and Water Board. And for a long time, a mayor that is present and truly running the Sewage and Water Board meetings. Make no mistake about it. We have good leadership at the table who are volunteering their time, they're asking the right questions, and who are truly committed to the city of New Orleans and getting it done right. Now, we didn't get here overnight, and we're not going to fix it overnight. Again, let's be real about it. And BGR knows better than I do, it didn't happen overnight. But it does mean that now is the time for a laser focus on not only making the improvements and spending down these billions of dollars that you hear about, it's real. Now, my administration, short period of time, 135 days, I have to say, we've been able to spend really double the amount spent between July of 2016 and May 7, 2018. Over 25% of that $2 billion we've been able to get out of the door. Now you say, well, why is that? How did that come about? Well, those were some of the questions we were asking as we took over, taking that deeper dive. What is taking these projects so long? But we found a mirror of things. But one I'll rest on because I don't have all night and definitely not all day. But what I will say, what we found, a lot of the projects kind of stuck, not moving, red tape. Some, I can't even tell you why. We just pulled it up, get it out of the door. But what we also found, some of these contractors who've gotten the bid, awarded it maybe in 2016, for example. I'm gonna just pick on one right now. Because I've had multiple meetings where I've had to call in the presidents of these corporations and these entities and to have those tough conversations and to say, your project isn't moving, but you've been paid and we're spending down our project management money. What's going on? When you got the bid in 2016, you told us you had all of the top leadership that you were going to ensure were on the ground in the city of New Orleans. Where are they? Why aren't these projects moving? Where's the project managers that you said were world class? Where are they? Nowhere to be found. Projects stuck, huddling around 25%, anywhere to 45% of completion. And you all should know there's a certain line item in terms of percentage that you have to reach really before you can begin to even draw down on that $2 billion. And it's just not one bucket of $2 billion now. But having this conversation was, again, looking them dead in the eye, saying we have to change this, or you're off the job. You will lose over $100 million of awards that you've won to do infrastructure projects in the city of New Orleans, that $100 million touching about 7 different projects that will help us as it relates to infrastructure, capturing water, and the water flow, preventing flooding or helping to reduce flooding in the city of New Orleans. But having that tough conversation has now led to project managers on the ground, those world-class we talked about, those weekly meetings, check-ins to make sure things are moving. Because what we have seen is that the city of New Orleans, again, has been spending the money, project management money down, but yet not tapping in the construction money that's tied to the project. So in some instances, we could be upside down on these projects we have to get done. But there's hope, because conversations are not only being had, but the response to those conversations is what we need to have happen, which ultimately turns into delivering results for our people. Other things, and I can go on, there are many different projects stuck just like this. It's unbelievable, but we're moving. We really are. And a testament to that, again, double the amount spent from 16 to May of 17 in the city of New Orleans. I mentioned we've hired our Sewage and Water Board director. We're still looking for a permanent as it relates to the Department of Public Works. However, the leadership we have in place has been instrumental of moving these projects. Even as it relates to, in terms of architects, we found stuck in design. Why? If it gets stuck in design, we can't then move it to the construction phase so that those who've also won these awards to do construction can get to work. Tough conversations really are yielding some results. It's okay. Also, I will have to say that as it relates to, and you've heard about this, in regards to the ferry terminal, that's been something that's been in the news here recently. Again, $14 million on the table, designed at $26 million. Totally off base. But we've had to have the tough conversations and say, the city of New Orleans will not pay for a redesign. It was over-designed. We don't have the money to do that, but let's figure it out collectively. And I have to say, it's being figured out. So, these are just some of the examples on that end. As it relates to revenue, I'll just touch on that a bit. We've been, again, doubling down on our efforts to find the money, fill the gap. And this has led us to, one, hiring up as it relates to the auditors so that we can ensure that we really are collecting all the tax revenue, again, that's generated, and that is for the city of New Orleans. We have a CFO in place. I tell you, that is no nonsense, and it's just changing how we even document the money we spend and the practices and policies and guidelines that are in place. You know that we have been under the gun with several audits as it relates to the FEMA money. And we just heard, as it relates to August of 18, that we've cleared the hurdle as it relates to the first $2 billion. We've come out, and that money will stay with the city of New Orleans. But it's a serious, serious situation, because we don't want to get to the point where any of these dollars are de-obligated. So we're making sure that we're having routine meetings with FEMA, GOSEP, all of our partners, both federal and state. We've even hired in-house to ensure that the historic process that was taking really an upward to 9 to 12 months, that we're cutting that down in half by bringing them in-house. We've asked FEMA to bring us or allow us to have staff within city government, again, working through these projects, working through the kinks. They have done that for us. And they've said that they're so excited about how we're moving things because it really helps at the federal level when they say, you know what, New Orleans, the money is moving now. Really, hands off. It needs to stay with the city of New Orleans, but they can only hold for so long. But that's why it's so important for my administration to continue to move these projects to get things done. Also, as it relates to the revenue, we found that there were many different franchise agreements that were either, expired and or just we weren't collecting the revenue on. But we have ensured that practices are in place. We've created an Office of Utilities, again, to make sure moving forward that we're managing these franchise agreements and New Orleans is getting her fair share. It's very important. We've also, as it relates to revenue, looked at ways to where we have been, whether it's, we've found that we have some unforeseen expenses for 18 that really put a hard gap on us as we look to forecasting for 2019. So there's about a $5 million plus hole we have to fill for 18, but it's about $37 million that we have to find and plug for 2019, as you forecast. But we're going to get there. I do believe we will, but it's just having to be creative, again, with the revenue streams that we have and also that the revenue streams that we need. Even changing the culture within city government about revenue. Every Monday, every Friday, I have meetings with my public safety team and not looking at my team in isolation, meaning just meeting with the chief of police or just with the chief of fire or just with the director of EMS. Collectively, we meet. But it's proven to be effective because as all of our leaders and our chiefs are listening to whether it is the existing conditions, the challenges that each department may face, collectively in listening, they're also coming up with real solutions to fix our problems. But one in particular that I'll rest around that deals with revenue is that one of our first meetings we had was one on the EMS side. I was told that EMS isn't in the business of making money. Of course not. We're helping people, saving lives. But we're leaving millions on the table that we're not collecting, whether or not it's from self-payers or even insurance. So I said, no, we're not in the business of making money on the EMS side, but we sure are in the business of collecting revenue that's owed to the city of New Orleans. And didn't you just hear the chief say, we're almost faced with about a gap or a deficit rising about $3 million. So the money that EMS may be leaving on the table can help over here on the NOPD side, looking again as a whole, not a silo. So what we're doing, as we've seen the various silos that exist within city government, we're breaking them down and we're building the levels of communication, but the workflow has been strengthened and we're seeing the difference head on. It was also mentioned, I know we get to Q&A and I don't want to rattle on too much, and you're back there, you told me you will give me your finger. So I'm looking, and not that finger, but not that finger. But what I will say, because I know we'll get to Q&A, and that will bring out more, I would say, in our discussion. But I will rattle off some of the other things in good terms, things that we have been doing. Now, we've secured over $10 million in home funds and CDB and the NIF fund and making sure that their layers are focused on affordable housing measures. We know we came in with zero money as it relates to soft seconds, and that is a priority for home ownership in filling that gap that our residents have. We've completed a comprehensive study as it relates to the traffic cameras. You heard me say I want those cameras to come down. And they will. in a phased approach, but an approach that is smart, an approach that is prudent, and one that is safety as well, one that's safe. So that speaks to the school zones there. We've also increased as it relates to awareness around data collection and sharing. I kind of mentioned that in terms of how the data that I get from the NOPD, data that I get from the fire department, as well as EMS, that will have a real impact on crime fighting strategies, but looking at the city as a whole and zeroing in around where hotspots are, but what's going on around or in that community where crime is occurring. And what we are seeing, there are many different layers, whether that is blight, overgrown lots, it's you know, the environmental fabric has to change. And so all of this has a direct relationship, in my opinion, to public safety, but at the end of the day, just an overall quality of life. We've appointed a director, interim director to the RTA, and created the first transportation department within city government. I do have a director, Ms. Laura Bryan, who really has hit the ground running in this regard. You've heard me launch here yesterday, Clean Up NOLA. We have to clean our city up. It goes right along with growing in order to survive. A cleaner city, you know, is a healthier city, and is definitely a safer city. But we have to get the trash out of people's eyes. We have to get trash from accumulating on our streets and in our neighborhoods that have a direct correlation, again, with drainage. Connecting the dots will be very important. Now, this initiative is very serious to me. It is a priority and has been. We're allocating resources to this, over $2 million to shore up a multiple of departments, breaking down the silos. And what I learned coming in, that each department was kind of doing their own thing, whether it was sanitation and park and parkways, and even as it relates to DPW with the catch basins, just in that regard, and many other things, code enforcement, safety and permits. No more silos. We have to leverage all of our resources and develop a strategy that we're deploying where we're walking the same walk, therefore getting your results in the community. And it is definitely tied to Clean Up NOLA. The Office of Youth and Families, the first ever in city government, taking a laser focused again on youth and families, a holistic approach in terms of how we're meeting the needs of our people who live in our city. Leveraging all public assets as it relates to our public libraries, the recreation department, the health department as well, very important. We have new leadership, and we've doubled down in terms of staff on the Human Relations Commission, which is important as well. First steps, we have an advisory board and an LGBTQ task force. I believe that that is very important. We are mindful always of the fact that we must continue to build momentum throughout the city of New Orleans. Today, we will open up our low barrier shelter. You heard me push for that on the New Orleans City Council, working with the DDD. We're cutting that ribbon today. Now, it's been open for over a month now because I wanted to do a soft opening, working out the kinks. We have to be very fluid as it relates to this because we're working with and trying to serve our most vulnerable people in the city of New Orleans. And no, people are not trash, but we do have to, again, clean up the streets of the city of New Orleans, meet people where they are, create that front door. So again, they can too be productive citizens in the city of New Orleans. It's very important. Of course, we must continue to keep our people safe and work towards a safer city. The New Orleans Police Department, which was mentioned, absolutely a holistic approach in terms of fighting crime. We're doing great, I would say, with recruitment efforts. Our classes are growing, but there's still more work to do. But as we leverage the data sets that we receive weekly, and we're deploying those strategies again in neighborhoods where crime is occurring, we will get there. But we cannot get there if we don't strengthen and beef up witness protection. We have a real issue with people not feeling safe coming forth to testify. They fear for their lives. See that? They fear for their lives. Exactly. The least thing, right? It's real. It's real. Now that wasn't the finger, but it was awfully loud. But I do believe the point that I was making, that the fear within us is real. At this time, we'll take questions.
Mayor, you talked about the convention center project.
Yes.
Concerns have been raised by BGR and by a new analysis. Where does that stand for you right now?
Okay. Well, where it stands for me right now really is assessing the overall project. And as I've said, I'm not against a hotel being built. That's not my stick. What I am for is, again, how we're using the revenue that's generated right here in the city of New Orleans to truly reinvest in the people in the city of New Orleans. I just don't see right now, on the face of what's been presented, is something that I can support at this time. So I am going to be leaning very heavily on internal analysis that we are doing. The latest even report that I received from BGR just yesterday, asking real questions that are great, and also making and clarifying some points that I think that should be considered. So I am open, but I am not open to the city of New Orleans continuing, to get beat out of revenue that's generated right here. I think that it's time for us to think differently just about that revenue stream. And I am not just talking about the convention center, so don't get me wrong. I'm thinking holistically about the 16 mills and others that are generated, as well as go to various entities that have no built-in accountability, which means no one's elected, but there are boards that make decisions. But we, through communication, I believe, can get there, and I'm open to that. But I am just seeing over and over again areas to where the city doesn't get its fair shake. But we want city government to do so much more. It needs more revenue. That's a fact. And it's revenue that's already being generated. We can't tax ourselves out of it. There's no more on the backs of the people. We get 2% pretty much of what is generated off of that tax base as it relates to hotel motel. We need just a little bit more. But it's, again, collectively, and not just with an arrow on the backs of the convention center nor hospitality. It's thinking differently. I think we're capable of thinking differently, and I need you to do that. BGR, you've done it. Yes, sir.
Mayor, you've talked about growing the tax base. How do you intend to grow the tax base, and how does that relate to nonprofit exemptions?
Well, nonprofit exemptions, there's been research done on that, and there is some money, I would say, that's on the table. It's not a lot, but every bit of it matters. I think that you have to do a cost-benefits analysis as it relates to the nonprofit community, because some of them are doing things that government just isn't doing, and we need them to continue to do that. But in regards to one of the things that comes out of that are even our higher ed community. That's something that resonates with people. They always talk about whether it's Tulane, use that as an example, or even the Archdiocese is used as an example. And I think, again, that we have to change. We have to turn the map around. Everyone needs to put some skin in the game. And I do believe in our nonprofit community that we can figure what that percentage looks like. But collectively, cost benefits, we have to look at it. In terms of growing the tax base, it's creating jobs. And in order to attract businesses and development in our city, one, we need to continue to do that, but we got to clean the city up. We have to do what other cities are doing as well. They're setting the tone and making people see that we want their investment, but that also we're willing to reinvest in ourselves. People are watching. And we want people to say, hey, I want to not only move to New Orleans, but I want to stay in New Orleans. People have choices. And you can go to other cities that are booming, and we can boom, and we've seen growth, but we want sustainable growth. So, playing to our strengths, of course, hospitality is a strength. You know, there's a goal to get to 13 million visitors. We can even surpass that. So you don't dumb it down, you play to it, you grow it. Grow the pie, making sure others have access to that pie growing. But you also have to play to your strength where we've seen growth, new industries, digital media platforms, we've seen that. DXC is a perfect example. The workforce is going to be a large component to growing the tax base. Skilled workers and laborers, making sure that they can align with these new industries, taking full advantage of the delocated worker funds that come through the state. We're leaving money on the table. But there are many, multiple ways, but it will be playing to our strengths, hospitality, as well as dealing with our port, our manufacturing. It's a big deal. I mentioned digital media platforms, stormwater management. We should be leading in that, and we are, but we can do better. Play to our strengths.
Janet Lopez asks, what is New Orleans doing to protect and advocate for our immigrant and refugee neighbors who are integral contributors to our community's economy?
Well, I think the city of New Orleans has been a leader on this front as it relates to us being a welcoming city. This didn't just start now, it started years ago. I initiated the Welcoming Cities resolution that led to the city of New Orleans making sure that we are looking at all of our people and as if they matter, and not just saying it, but by talking it. And that's one of the reasons why the Office of Youth and Families was so important to me, because we do have to create a front door to meet people again where they are and with the issues that our families are dealing with and the challenges that they're dealing with. So having the full support of the mayor's office will be consistent with not only what I've said, but how I've acted. So I think the city of New Orleans is in good shape.
You talk about the need for economic development. Does the city have a comprehensive economic development plan? If so, can you discuss the plan's priorities and strategies? If not, is this something your administration is working on?
Sure. Now, a full economic development plan is something that we are working on. Now, coming in, and you all know, last year there was a consolidation that was made in terms of the New Orleans Business Alliance, our workforce development component, all these going under one umbrella. Our economic development dollars that are supposed to grow economic development, grow jobs and opportunity, are now under this umbrella. Now, what we found is that the consolidation was created, but how these entities actually function and operate and work together was not developed. So what we have been doing is just taking a hard look of making sure that systems are not only talking, but that we do have an economic development plan that is where we're utilizing and leveraging all of those economic development dollars, therefore, that could support a strategy moving forward.
Member of the audience says, I'm in my mid-30s and have many conversations with people my age that all center around education. How can you reassure us our kids will have opportunity?
Well, reassure you that your children have opportunity. I think I've kind of touched on that. We have to continue, one, to make sure that our city is viable, that our infrastructure is in place so that we all have a place to live and stay in the city of New Orleans. If we don't do that, you know what the outcome is. In addition to that, yes, we do have to grow jobs and opportunity, but we also, in order to attract that level of development, we have to make some changes right here in the city of New Orleans. We have to be intentional about how we are improving conditions around where investments have occurred. One example is that you have Dixie Brewery that's now in New Orleans East, which is a huge investment. But if you go there, shame on us if we don't clean up around Dixie Brewery so that we can ensure that that becomes a catalyst for more growth and development in our city. We can get there. I'm committed to that.
What are your priorities when it comes to unfunded needs that your administration is currently trying to address in the 2019 budget?
Well, you're asking what are some of the things we're doing? Yeah, we're proposing, well, one is scrubbing these books, getting more auditors in here, that we are making sure that we're auditing the businesses throughout the city. And again, not being punitive at all, but there is revenue that we're leaving on the table, and we have to ensure that we're collecting it. I rattled off many of those buckets of revenue that we're not collecting, and all of them matter, even as it relates to, for example, the Office of Secondary Employment. Will come in, they say, well, it's only $500,000. Well, it's $500,000 that we need. So every dollar counts, and we have to ensure that we're collecting all the dollars out there.
Mayor, thank you. Cleveland Powell asks, what is the current status of the municipal auditorium FEMA allocation versus the cost of renovation timeline?
Okay, I'm sorry. FEMA allocation timeline.
What is the current status of municipal auditorium FEMA allocation versus cost of renovation timeline?
Okay. Oh, this is a good one. I love this one. So the municipal auditorium, as you know, is attached to that $2 billion, one of those buckets of billions that we have of FEMA dollars. Right now, we have close to $40 million that has been allocated for the municipal auditorium. Now, it's not money that we've drawn down because the project hasn't moved. You know, you have to have it moving, 65, draw it down. We have a task force that is targeting the municipal auditorium. We have a real opportunity to redevelop it, looking at it becoming even a civic center as it was designed to be from the very beginning. We're looking at, with that civic center, City Hall even being there, where we will restore, of course, the auditorium to be repurposed. And on the new construction skin of the building, it can be demolished, and therefore you can build new and you can go up. It will reactivate not only Armstrong Park, Congo Square, but also the historic buildings that we have on site. It puts City Hall in a very accessible area in the city, right there in the Treme. Transportation options, great. Parking, you name it. So one of the things that we're doing right now is that we have schematics that are being done on the municipal auditorium. We're bringing on I would say, a finance guru that will look at multiple funding streams, because in order to make it work, we have to dig into every source of dollars that we do have at our disposal. And I tell you, looking at it, we can make it work. But what is on the table is the FEMA money, also historic tax credits, also some bond funding that we can put to it, but it can work. And so right now, that is where we are with the municipal auditorium. It is not set in stone. It's something that we are looking at, and something that does have to go to the public through the FEMA 106 review process. I'm hoping within the next month and a half that we're ready to have that conversation with the public and through this process. But it's something that is truly viable for the city of New Orleans, because we do need to move out of City Hall where it is now, meaning the building. And the location of City Hall now is prime real estate, prime real estate. And the best and highest use is not City Hall nor the courts right now. And so it's just, again, another opportunity, turn that map around, be creative of how we can activate and utilize revenue.
Billy Marshall asks, why doesn't NOPD implement stop and frisk? Courts have ruled it legal if done properly, and that is how Giuliani cleaned up New York.
Well, Giuliani cleaned up New York doing many different things, and it did not just start with him, but he did do a lot of great things, and it wasn't through the stop and frisk. I will say the New Orleans Police Department is making sure that, one, we are upholding justice and the rights of people, but also being strategic in terms of how we approach. Community policing strategies are the way to go. Building relationships between our police officers and the community is the way to go. And it also happened in New York as well. We have identified, we're doing a clergy even in cops initiative that is working in many other municipalities. Again, building trust within the city of New Orleans between officers and community. We are implementing more traffic stops. That is also a way in terms of getting guns as well as drugs off the street. But it's all in the approach. And I believe that the New Orleans Police Department are some of the most skilled officers in the United States of America that have truly kept the city of New Orleans out of the spotlight like other cities have been when it comes to jeopardizing and crossing the line of people's rights.
Mayor, what is your position on the proposed amendment to the city charter, which will be put to public vote on December 8th, to restore a council member or their appointee to the Sewerage and Water Board of Directors? Would this change in governance of the Sewerage and Water Board be for the better or not?
Well, I don't believe that adding a city council member to the Sewage and Water Board is going to change where we are now and how the courses that we need to chart moving forward. But I think it's an added addition, and I welcome it on the Sewage and Water Board, so I have no problems with adding that.
Is there any concern about conflict of interest?
No, not that I see. I mean, it was there before. I don't believe that there's a conflict of interest. I just do not believe that having a city council member on the Sewage and Water Board instantly fixes our issues. But I do believe that having a real active board and an engaged board and an executive director that's committed and understands how to lead and manage an organization and utilize the revenue and spend down and ensure that these infrastructure projects are done are going to get us what we need.
Okay. Staying with the Sewage and Water Board, how have you coped with the responsibilities, possibly opposing responsibilities, of being both the mayor of New Orleans and president of the Sewage and Water Board? In your opinion, is it a good thing or a bad thing that one person handles both of those roles?
Well, you know, I'm dealt the cards, I'm dealing with the cards that I've been dealt. And while I'm mayor of the city of New Orleans, I'm president of the Sewage and Water Board, and I own that. And so it is a balance, it is. But I find it, I'm comfortable with it because we have good leadership on that Sewage and Water Board, and I have a great president pro tem that is fully engaged and can represent me even, if I'm not there. But at the end of the day, it's how we work together with the executive director, but I'm finding the balance to be quite refreshing.
Anonymous member of the audience says, in order to grow, we need to learn to live with water. You mentioned the urban water plan. Can you please share the status of implementing that plan?
Mm-hmm. Implementing the plan is going to depend heavily on how we're able to fund that plan. As I mentioned on that bottom line, it's about $4 billion in an uptick. I think Andy goes to about $9 billion, anywhere from $4 to $9 billion. A part of it is what I have asked the oil and gas industry that do not want me to file a lawsuit when they ask me what can they do. I said, well, there's an urban water management plan that has been developed with the price tag on it. So a good start is coming to the table with some funding that could help this city protect itself.
Well, following on that, Ari Acevedo asks, what steps will you take to ensure the urban water plan is funded and implemented?
Well, it's going to go back to, again, how we are pushing to reallocate revenue and share revenue in a greater capacity that's generated right here in the city of New Orleans. We have a physical infrastructure problem in our city. And we need to ensure that revenue that's generated here collectively, that we can fund these mandates that we have that will make our city safer.
Can the city require teams that utilize NORD facilities to clean up behind their events? It starts with our kids.
Well, it starts with all of us, right? And parents raise their children. So I don't want to just put it on the kids. But I tell you, it's a great source if you do want to change the attitudes of adults, is working with those children. Because they'll tell you, Mama, pick that up, do this, do that. You know, they're parking on the grass, you know. Look at them on the street. My daughter is, they call her my deputy mayor. But what I will say is that Clean Up NOLA is really designed to send the message across the board that we all have a stake in cleaning up this city and in protecting our environment and making this city healthier and safer, because it's nasty. We have rodents the size of cats, and they're not neutral rats.
Donald Faust, I believe it is, asks, your campaign promoted government transparency. Why did your top advisors have to sign non-disclosure agreements? Mm-hmm.
The top advisors, this is on the transition team. Okay, so the transition period, the top advisors absolutely had to fill out and file a non-disclosure agreement. Creating safe spaces are very important when you're wanting to engage people and have them give their input and not feel any pressure about not being able to share. I'm a community organizer, and I understand how to build coalitions. I understand how to work with people, listen to them, and I also understand how safe spaces truly do create opportunities for us to move projects and plans forward. I did not want the transition report just to be a document. I was adamant about it being practical and implementable. And so I stand by those non-disclosure agreements because it wasn't about tearing down the process. It was about creating a process to where people who were engaged in volunteering their time were doing it in a respectable manner, and one that they got the utmost respect, and that was from me.
Staying with government transparency, Councilman Jason Williams has said that you engaged in a conference call with Sewage and Water Board members that violated open meeting laws.
I don't agree with that. I definitely don't agree with that. But what I will say is I absolutely called my board members. We got information on a Friday that we learned through the media that top directors had received an increase, and that increase was retroactive. Now, this is how we learned. And I needed to make sure I phoned my members and just to touch their pulse, independent calls. But over the course of that weekend, and as changes were being made that I pushed for, I, not the board, has no authority over that, but I, as mayor, absolutely had to take a hard look at that. And once I did, I wanted to inform my board of that. So it was not a meeting, it was information that was shared. Because I do believe, and this is one important fact, about me in terms of boards particularly that I oversee. I don't believe in rubber stamps, and I do believe in informing people if I want them to be engaged. And it's respecting their role and their time and their service that they commit to really each and every one of us as they serve on the Sewage and Water Board. And I did not want to recreate, I'm conscious about this, a situation to where board members and things go down that they feel like the president is doing this and they know nothing about it. So it was very intentional only to inform, but nothing was voted on, no action was taken. And as my attorneys have said, we truly rectified any issues that even were valid around that through a public meeting that we had right after.
Those pay raises for those three leaders were huge, $20,000 in two cases, $45,000 in one case. And yet they say that those pay raises fell in line with a new pay classification system for all Sewage and Water Board members, some people getting raises of 26%.
The pay raises for all Sewage and Water Board employees came through a compensation package that was approved by the Civil Service Commission in 17, we started 18, and also adopted by the New Orleans City Council again at 17. These practices began in 18. And they were for your pump operators, your welders, all of your folks who make Sewage and Water Board run, that truly have gotten paid pennies and have kept that agency afloat. It did not have much to do about these employees that were non-classified employees. And what I was told was that those raises were aligned with promises that were made by the previous director of the Sewage and Water Board. That's what I was told.
Okay. Will Snowden rather, asks, on November 6th, citizens of Louisiana will have a chance to vote on approving a bill requiring unanimous juries on all felony cases. Why is this bill important in your view?
Well, I mean, we want to really make sure that we're walking the talk as it relates to real justice and building equity, in the city of New Orleans and really the state of Louisiana. We have prison reform. We're at the forefront of that. We are reconstituting how we manage and how we practice in the city of New Orleans and in the state that has a direct impact on real people. We have been the mass incarceration capital of the United States and of the world, really. That has to change.
Dr. Lana Joseph asks, are we currently working on a plan to pull larger corporations in to create higher paying jobs to retain our college graduates?
Yes. Are we
currently working on a plan to pull in larger corporations to create higher paying jobs to keep our college graduates?
Yes, I will say yes to that, and that really does speak to an economic development plan that we're working on now, and not just as it relates, I really want that partnership and those partnerships to start even while our students are in college, internship programs, so that as they finish, they're really on a direct path and a trajectory to getting a job that is aligned with their skill sets and their capacity. I just see a real opportunity there to leverage not only the corporations, but our 8 colleges and universities in the city of New Orleans. I don't believe that we play to our strength as it relates to that, because it truly is an industry in and of itself.
All right, one final question, Mayor, from Bernard DeSantis. In the 70s, Charity Hospital had free mental health services. While it was far from a wonderful solution, it was much better than jail. Can we do better?
Absolutely, we can do better, and that speaks to the human infrastructure needs that we have in the city of New Orleans. What we will be working on is scaling up a program that I created in Broadmoor, a behavioral health program, leveraging our graduate students at the schools of social work throughout our city, where they have to do 1 year of a clinical, and they have to do their clinical under a licensed clinical social worker. We're now hiring a licensed clinical social worker that will be aligned with the Office of Youth and Families, and therefore making City Hall a site for social workers to do their clinical. They will be with us for 1 year at a time, and this is how we were able to meet the needs of residents, and I do see this is a program that can clearly be scaled up. The licensed clinical social worker that was hired by Broadmoor, Ms. Ana Maria Villamarin Lupin, just won a prestigious award at Tulane because, and these are from her peers, meaning those social workers who've designated her as a top in her field in the state of Louisiana. I think that's a real unique honor. And there's a waiting list at Broadmoor. I want a waiting list at City Hall.
All right, Mayor.
Thank you
so much. I'm afraid that's all the time we have for questions. Thanks again to Iberia Bank for its generous sponsorship of the breakfast briefing, and thanks to all of you for being with us here today. We hope this event has been informative, and we hope we'll see you again in the future at future BGR events. Hope you have a great day.